The views and opinions expressed in this podcast do not represent the views and opinions of Pod Nation Media or any of its affiliated podcasts.
Holy shit, dude. Who would have thought? Here we are. Once again, round number 2. Episode number 2.
Episode number 2.
Holy shit. And we kind of left you on a cliffhanger if you listened last time. Got Sean Rowe and myself, your hosts here in the Shade of Brilliance. And the last time we were speaking about some pretty interesting shit so far as my interests are concerned. I don't know what you're interested to, but Sean Rowe, what do you think?
The various institutions of mind control and brainwashing. That's a very interesting subject indeed.
See? And I didn't think I was the only one interested in it, but I don't really have the opportunity to cross paths with people who are interested in talking about it too. Sean Rowe, thankfully, he's able to indulge these types of conversations that I like to have from time to time because, well, holy shit, this is some stuff that, like I said, it's pretty fucking cool to me. I like the idea of controlling people's minds. And we're going to control yours for the next better part of 2 hours. What do you think of apples? Like fruit?
Well, you know, we are trying to control minds, but not in the same sense as these institutions that we're about to talk about. Isn't that right?
Well, in some respects, yes, and in some respects, no. I would suggest, I mean, we're not going to control your minds in like a malicious sense. We're not trying to politically reprogram you, or are we?
Well,
I don't know what his agenda is. I'm not. I don't have any agenda, but other than to try to enjoy myself. I have an outlet here of some sort. Sometimes you guys might enjoy what I got to say, what Sean's got to enlighten your ass with.
What'd you refer to it as? You call it the psycho-philosophical...
Oh, yes. Well, this is... What did I call it? I said it's a podcast odyssey into the socio-political affairs of our times and
the
psycho-philosophical presentation.
Insights.
I don't remember exactly what the...
Or a synonym for that, whatever.
Whatever it is.
So, in any case, the end of the last show, we discussed... very important institutions of mind control. Of course, we didn't really get into the subcategories of said institutions, but we did go over government, the church, or more broadly, religion. We got into economics, which is, you know, the labor force and how money brings its own insights into the table. And we also talked about education, the school system, and of course media, that's a fucking big one, right? But yeah, we're gonna talk about all that plus some other ones.
Wait, there's more. As if you didn't think your mind could be controlled that much, and well, holy shit, you're gonna find out there's a lot more that exists beyond the curtain with the Wizard of Oz and all that shit. What does that mean? Even I don't even know what the fuck I just said, but. I mean,
Oz behind a curtain?
Yes, he's great and he's powerful. Just you can't interrupt him because.
Or is that the Power Rangers guy?
Power Rangers was a different generation. It's like Power Rangers to me is like the same generation that got Pogs and Pokemon, and that was just
Which is mine.
Your generation. Yeah. I don't get it. I don't get it.
Well, let me just be clear. I stand apart from those people. I don't even play Pokemon Go, and
he's a rebel.
And but I mean, no, I like Pokemon. That's the thing. It's nostalgic to me, but I'm just not going to play it because the app itself stores information. It's too much information.
I've heard people talk about how it's it pervades our privacy in certain respects.
Kind of like the Facebook Messenger app.
It tracks where you go and this, that, and the other. But my question is, I mean, isn't it presumed that that's already being done anyway?
Well, yeah, of course. But I mean, through specific apps, entities can tap into those specific apps, and then like they can use that to their advantage. You know, it's not like a general cyberspace, like billions and billions and infinite variables. Like if you pick a specific app to like surveil, then like your odds of, you know, meeting your goals, achieving what you're trying to find out, like that will be realized much sooner.
Okay, so I mean, this doesn't seem like your concern doesn't seem like it's limited to just like any marketing type of information that they could derive. You're concerning yourself more with something with a little bit more of a malicious implication, like a police state kind of big brother surveillance kind of thing going on.
Sure, which is one of the subcategories of government, but of course we'll get into that.
Well, no, I don't know. Far be it for me to be the devil's advocate, but I'm just not quite seeing how they can do more through the Pokemon Go app versus any other app. Like, what's...
Well, no, just like it's not just limited to Pokemon Go. It's like any of those apps that do those things.
Well, I mean, okay, but hypothetically speaking, couldn't they just do that through your phone service? Like whoever's, you know, I'm not going to give the name of the company that I do my phone business with, but isn't that pretty much the same thing? I mean, wouldn't they whoever they may be, wouldn't they be able to just access the fucking phone company?
There's more hoops to go through using that method.
So they're legally jumping through hoops and stuff. Okay, so
just like the San Bernardino iPhone, Apple, like trying to break into that shit, you know?
How can they not do that, man? I mean, like, I'm thinking, I've heard articles at the very least, whether or not it ever actually happened or whether it got used and then stopped or whatever. But I had heard that once upon a time there was an interest in police departments being able to deactivate the phone and or video applications to your phone. Have you heard about this?
I have heard about that.
The photo or video?
But what I was referring to was that the people that had those phones, or maybe it was just one phone, the police and the FBI, they couldn't get to certain files because what they wanted was in the phone's hardware itself, right? So like they disabled their cloud and all that other shit. I think that they actually could get into their WhatsApp, or in any case, if it wasn't like those suspects, it was like other suspects where they were able to tap into like specific apps, you know.
So it's
and in that phone, there was nothing like that. What they wanted was on the phone.
So basically, this just boils down to legal speak and mumbo jumbo that would essentially enable anybody who would be concerned with that type of with negotiating that type of legal hindrance that would enable them to do whatever they wanted to do. And I guess that's just have more consistent access to the individual to, I guess, monitor and survey. Is essentially what it boils down to. I mean, we're just trying to make sure that nobody's going into unrestricted areas
and if somebody commits a crime.
Okay. Well, I mean, I can see where that might be their argument. What I would have to argue that is, well, if you're even remotely considering a life of crime and black market operation, I would imagine you probably don't want to do anything with a cell phone then, right? You don't want a cell phone?
Well, but you would need a cell phone.
Speaking of cell phones, somebody decided they wanted to message me. And for whatever reason, I am not going to answer this. I'm going to put it in airplane. Oh, I can't put it in airplane mode.
People are messaging me too, but
Well, no, I'm not answering the message. I was going to put it in airplane mode, but I'm not going to be able to access the website.
Wait, why would you put it in airplane mode?
So nobody can text. I just wanted to be
why
able
don't you just put it on silent?
I could do that, because that would make too much sense.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, let me tell you, man, the weed's working. Leave me alone. Actually, it's not weed. It's cherry-flavored tobacco.
So, the institution of government, obviously surveillance is within that, like Patriot Act, Edward Snowden's revelations about the NSA.
For sure.
Just general Big Brother. I'm gonna like spy on all of your shit and your IP addresses
for you and me,
and your internet service providers and all that kind of thing. But in addition to that, there's the judicial system.
Yeah, and the judicial system is part and parcel. I said it again. I said I wasn't going to say it. I'm not going to say it.
You weren't going to say what?
I'm not going to. I just said it, so you'll just have to look when you load it up. Good, because it sucks. I hate that phrase because I say it too much. But because the judicial system is a component of the government, I kind of think it's almost like one and the same. Even though we could, what's the other? I mean, you could say that the executive branch, but they, when they are, all working in concert with one another, I think it might as well, for all intents and purposes, we can just use the term government, and that can umbrella over all of those. I mean, shit, with all of the various aspects of government within just one of the branches, the amount of different ways to which each subcategory would preoccupy, direct, disrupt the navigation and control of your, I won't say control, but I will say this, man, I had a pretty unfortunate experience using one of the corporate institutions. It was a airline that actually does not have, it does not have the, it does not have the good graces to allow for me to give it a plug, because this particular airline forced upon me an unexpected sleepover in Chicago's O'Hare Airport, and the whole experience just drove me absolutely fucking crazy. I'll say this, man, like, yeah, I definitely was not able to successfully navigate, control, direct, or any of the other adjectives that are relative to control.
To govern.
I was not able to govern my mind, dude. I was so preoccupied with just the most disruptive form of anger and frustration in a company's inability to provide the good and service that you've paid for, and then leave you in a worse situation than you were initially, and then being stuck having to pay literally out the nose and ass if necessary. I don't know, man. I have no love for this particular airline who's, I'm not going to say their name because they don't deserve it. I don't want to hear it. You should get it? I don't want to hear it.
Oh, I see what you did there.
You see what I'm doing there? It's so clever. Yeah, I don't want to hear. If you don't want to hear it, don't fly on that airline.
But
what the fuck, dude? I'm crazy.
But what? So you're saying that the judicial branch and the legislative branch and the executive branch should just be a single subcategory under government?
Well, I mean, I think they all work in concert with one another, and the greater collective idea is to literally control the ideas and discourse that that swims throughout the socio-political landscape in the mind's eye of its people.
And no, just whenever you were like offering to have me, give you another sub-institution, or maybe even like a whole new institution in and of itself, but the political parties, that can be a subcategory of government.
Sure.
And when I say political parties, I mean the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, the two parties that have essentially taken hold of everything.
Well, I mean, I think that each one of these institutions, in one respect, of controlling the minds of the people is, a priority or a prerequisite of itself. Considering the type of fracturing and fragmentation that has occurred across the socio-political landscape of the country, I can only imagine that in one respect or another, where you would think that these institutions might, aid in facilitating or bolstering any relationship that each one of these fragmented, fractured, pieces of society, that divides us in respect to our, the very dichotomies that exist in the sides that have been chosen and factions that are aligned with and things like that. I think that these institutions largely in part are responsible for the exacerbation of our problems rather than the collective. I hate to use the word healing. Like there's a healing. I'm healing. Okay, yeah.
Just like the nature of itself.
How about resolve? They resolve themselves, or there is
renovate.
A resolution. There's a resolution.
Resolution.
Yeah. Something to that effect.
Yeah. Anyways, just both of those parties are corporatist entities. Just corruption left and right, no matter where you look. All this like lobbyist bullshit and just
which lobbyist bullshit?
All of it.
Okay.
All of it.
Okay, fair enough.
Just, all of this like campaign finance shit. Citizens United and McCutcheon and all the related cases that have allowed damn near infinite amount of dark money to be funneled into campaigns of all types.
Well, isn't that kind of like the nature of the drug war? I mean, to generate a whole slew of different conflicts, around the world, get financed from, illicit.
Yeah, but Citizens United is like recent though.
Oh, well, man, I'm old, man. Yeah. I have trouble remembering stuff.
But yeah, so there's all that. There's all the dark money shit that's coming in through, non-profit organizations, 501c3, 501c4, and all the other fucking like numbers that's in the fucking parentheses.
See, 501c3 is the one that always intrigued me because that's the one tax loop that allows for the biggest miscarriage in American justice. It allows for churches to not get taxed.
Yeah. And there's other ones that allow certain entities, if they're related to like education or something of that nature, to where those organizations can just have like unlimited power now, especially with these recent cases.
What are you going to do about it? I'm going to be dead in 20 years, as he likes to laugh at. What are you going to do about it? It's you and your kids that got shit to worry about.
Like if we don't overturn those cases, then
what's that quote from the network?
Everything is fucked. Then basically,
you seen the movie?
For lack of better terms,
movie The Network?
No,
it's a
but I have seen.
You ever seen the? I'm sure you've seen dramatizations and revisitations and various productions since it came out, but the whole "I'm mad as hell and I'm not gonna take it anymore." You know what I'm talking about?
I haven't seen that.
You know the commercial? It's my money and I want it now. You know that?
Yes.
Okay, well that's where they got that idea for that commercial from the movie The Network, and I think it's like, is it Jack Lemmon or somebody? I can't remember, but he's a newscaster and he basically was doing something to the effect, but with a lot more production behind it, you can imagine. Something to the effect of what we're doing here. Just trying to suggest to the people that, hey, this sucks. You guys cool with it? Are you really? And, speaking upon
because if you are,
you're fucking nuts.
You shouldn't be. You're part of the problem. If
I'm part of the problem right now.
If you're apathetic towards, just like I said last night. If you're apathetic towards like politics and all that kind of shit, it's like, oh yeah, I don't care, or things of that nature. It's like it affects you. It affects us all.
Well, you could say that inactivity.
Whenever you were telling that dude, you were like, bullshit causes deaths, bullshit causes birth, bullshit causes.
I remember. Okay,
all
they
that
don't
shit.
know what we're talking about. We
Well,
just
go
happened to
ahead
run
and-
in.
Yeah.
Okay, so we went to go to the metal show last night. Who did we go see at the Rudyards? Who was it?
Spellcaster,
Ex Mortis.
Mortis, and Holy Grail.
Right. And I went outside to smoke my cigarettes that I like to do, and lo and behold, I get in this conversation with some dude who looked like he was in his mid-30s, but it turns out he was like 24, and for whatever reason, he needed a light. That's what it was. He needed a light, and we just started bullshitting about politics of some sort. I don't remember what his agenda was, but I was kind of just like, I was, just kind of like feeding him a little bit of information here just to see what, where he was coming from, because I really didn't care. I was just passing the time. But then my brother called no sooner that Sean had come out, and he's like, hey, what's this jackass talking about? So next thing you know...
I wish that I didn't tag you out of that conversation either.
Man, my brother called. What are you going to do? But
in any case, this guy thought that the likes of Raytheon and Lockheed Martin and Boeing and those types of corporations, don't deal in the business of war, which is, they're defense contractors. That's like one of the things that they do. What do aerospace and aeronautical engineers design? They design rockets, projectiles, flying things that are able to be launched into the air and then come back to the earth. What can you do with those things? You can weaponize those things. So I was telling that guy, like, don't be naive, don't be a fool. Don't be foolish. There are companies that are in the business of war.
Oh, well, yeah, dude. And from what I understand, considering
the military-industrial complex, Dwight Eisenhower.
Yeah, but dude, that's what I'm saying. Like, you want to win, don't you? You want to be able to buy the biggest, baddest, or smallest, fastest, whatever it is. The most effective killing device or machine or whatever. That's got to be a hot commodity in a increasingly conflict-oriented world.
That's like a crude commodity. Like, war in and of itself is crude and outdated.
Is it crude?
It's crude.
It's crude.
Like, advanced civilizations, alien civilizations on other galaxies, do you think they go to war? If they do, it's with, like, some other fucking galaxy or star system. It's not, like, within their own planet, because they're past that shit. It's crude. It has no meaning. It has no meaning.
It's a bit presumptuous to just suggest that any aliens
that are capable of interstellar travel.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know that have you seen an alien that's capable of it?
I haven't, but I'm
Neither have I.
I'm saying that those life forms do not engage in warfare with their own species.
Well, in terms of the level of society, I get I remember hearing about some shit on
yeah, like we're below level 1 because we go to war. Level
we're
1.
Still an establishing society, meaning
of
that
course we're still establishing.
Yet to be an established dominant culture. And that's an inevitability. And again, I think we probably mentioned Chomsky the last episode regarding
which we probably will in every episode.
Probably, but the whole idea of hegemony or conquest.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's gonna happen one way or the other. I hope that well, I won't be around at that point, I don't expect. But I would like to think that the dominating society is the one that still has an enthusiasm for the pioneering efforts of space pursuits, things of that nature, that would at least allow us to get to maybe level 1, 2, 3, 4, and maybe the opportunity for 5 and beyond. Levels of society, and maybe be able, if we're really lucky, if we eat our vitamins and eliminate religion, maybe we'll figure out how to, attach our DNA to radio signals and shit and send that out into space and maybe plant starseed in that capacity.
Yeah, there's definitely some talk about like beaming yourself to another location, of course.
It ain't going to be me. I'm not going to benefit.
The thing about that, though, is like, in order to decimate your molecules, wouldn't you like technically die at that point? And then whenever you're put back together, you're like reborn, so to speak. So, are you even the same person?
Well, shit.
Man, that's tripping me out, man.
Your cells generate.
That's like far out fucking shit.
Dude, dude, get your bongos. What I'm saying is that's something that's fuck's sake, weed's working.
In any case, just real quick before we move on to the next institution, I read that on The Future of the Mind by Michio Kaku, the theoretical physicist. It's an excellent book. Check out that book whenever you get a chance. It's all bound with futuristic, science-y shit. But anyway, money, jobs, and the labor force.
Well, shit, dude. I mean, the whole idea of money being on your mind and mind being on your money. I mean, that makes all the sense in the world to consider it, the influence of one's mindscape and the significance that money's going to have on it. I don't really even think we need to talk about that. That's how blatant I think that one is.
Well, all right, no. I understand you, but something that is important is that part because it's related to that in the sense that your job, will essentially take over your life. And then whenever you combine your job with all these other aspects of your life, like, having kids or being like really active in some kind of organization or just anything. I mean, there's fucking thousands of variables you can put in this place, but those things will subvert your attention and make you not, concentrate on things that you should be concentrating on.
So, yeah, but who's to say what another guy should be concentrating on? Mind your own fucking business. That's what I could imagine an argument would be. The only thing I can really offer to complement where you're coming from and where I think ultimately it should best be served to go is like the pathological rationale. This is like a term that's relative to psychology, and it's relative to the ego, its relationship to the ego, in that the ego of every individual, unless you are a very disciplined individual, when posited with situations where you might be tempted to, I guess, act against what might otherwise be civically or socially responsible. I'm not going to say morally. An individual might act unethical, and it's kind of relative to, well, not just personal and private morality, because in a private respect, you can probably get away with a lot more shit than you could publicly, right? Especially if you're acting in an amoral fashion,
What do you mean by private and public? Do you mean like corporations and government?
No, I mean, just a general sense. Okay. Like, I think it was Boyd Rice who was speaking upon the idea that he's free to do what he wants or he's free to be who he is in his bathroom. As weird as the connotation might be, right. But there you are. I mean, it's like you have the idea of privacy, whereas, in the external world, the exterior world rather, where, you have the absolute absence of privacy. You have this, and I was actually going to offer just the surveillance state itself, in and of itself. I mean, right, It's fostered obviously by the government, but in and of itself, it almost serves as its own institution to keep people preoccupied, because individuals act differently when on camera. You see how goofy and stupid and stuttery. I stutter a lot, but the whole idea of hamming it up.
You're doing pretty well so far.
But people ham it up in most cases when put in front of a camera or a microphone and say lots of things they might not otherwise do or just say or whatever. But the whole idea is, if you're outside and the external world and you got fucking how many cameras do you think a person going to and from the workplace, how many cameras do you think the average person
encounters?
Or it doesn't.
I'll tell you one thing, it's not like in other areas of the world.
Well, I mean, shit, dude. I don't know where you're talking about. You're talking about Great
Britain.
About
like
Great Britain got a whole lot more, from what I understand.
CCTV.
They got more cameras than they got people to watch them.
They have more cameras than guns.
Don't get me started on that.
It's actually, what's pretty trippy and interesting is whenever you watch like a procedural cop show that's based in, like Great Britain or places of that nature, like all the cops, they don't have any guns, so they have to like do their work without guns.
Mm-hmm.
And then you watch like an American one, and it's just like the guns are just ablazing throughout the whole fucking episode. There's like thousands of shots, but the thing is that those cops still get the job done. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing is, the bills. What do they call those guys? The bill. Is that what they call the British cops? The Bob. I don't know. They call them something.
I don't know.
But in any case, the British cops, they don't necessarily have to anticipate that they're. I almost called them a victim.
The perpetrator has itself a gun.
But the fact that I almost called the individual a victim when thinking of the cops, and that was completely unintentional. Wow, that says something. Part of the climate.
Subconsciously.
Yeah, dude, and I just recognized that I did that.
Like
that's not even I didn't even mean to do that.
That's not even your view.
It's not actually.
Yeah, it's like opposite.
And even if it was.
I mean, I wouldn't say opposite. I would just say that there's, two perspectives. Anyways.
Well, part of that perspective involves that the cop in Britain does not have to anticipate with such a degree of likelihood that the person he is dealing with, what'd you call them? The perpetrator. He doesn't have to necessarily expect that guy's got a gun on him. The guy in the United States, definitely a little different over here across the pond. So, that being said, if you are in a position where you are a, quote, peacekeeper, you've got different tools afforded to you, and apparently, as current events would suggest, you've got a considerable degree of leeway in terms of whether or not you use that tool judiciously and righteously, because there's a lot of shit going on, and it's not helping their perspective, or at least the perception of them. But it's not to say that I'm a hater. I can identify with the security is kind of necessary in a society of order and laws. But then again, if you've got individuals who are acting in a lawless manner, who are those who are sought to enforce or even establish or govern. And if they're not, there's absolutely no, dude, I was thinking about gangsters. People can say, oh, criminality and gangsters, they have no respect for the law. They have a wanton disregard for the law. And then I think about, the whole idea that here we do. And the meme is true. Like on the Facebook shit you see, and you got this Hillary, isn't me, and I'm not pro-Trump, I'm not pro-Hillary. In fact, I'm not pro any of them. I vote none of the above, like Richard Pryor did in Brewster's Millions with John Candy. Watch that shit. Vote none of the above.
Don't do that though. But
definitely do that. It's all a farce.
Don't do that.
It's all a farce.
Don't do that.
You want vote? You want to vote in a direction that will probably, you might not ever be able to actually see the end benefit, but vote revolt. Just do it.
What you should do is you should stop concentrating so much on the presidential election and start concentrating on municipal and state elections, and also the 2018 elections of Congress.
If you want to play that game. See, here's one
those voting, instances have much more power than the presidential election by far.
And this is kind of an interesting little example here, because though me and Sean Rowe are here in the Shade of Brilliance, and we might co-host this, the same show, not to say that we, both of our minds are in absolute lockstep in any or, to any great extent or limited degree. Mm-hmm. So
Aren't you a right-wing extremist?
I don't,
Or wait,
dude. I don't know what the hell I am, dude.
more of an anarchist.
It really depends on the on my mood, to be quite honest with you. What side of the bed I wake up on is largely dependent upon whether I'm, some.
Incidentally, that is why the two-party system doesn't work, because the political compass, which is essentially a Cartesian plane with the 4 planes on their X and Y. Mm-hmm. There's 4 planes there which dictate your political ideology and whatnot. And if there's 4 planes, then surely 2 parties cannot, sustain itself for all of human thought.
I wouldn't think so either, but it's gotten us this far. But where the fuck are we?
Well, I mean, Abraham Lincoln was a third-party vote.
That's what I hear.
Because back then the Republican Party was a third party, so maybe we should learn from that.
Well, I mean, and this is kind of funny because it's interesting because, like I was saying, me and Sean Rose, opinions and perspectives aren't necessarily always in lockstep. But this particular, I wouldn't even call it, I don't even know if it's a disagreement, but we'll just say it's a difference in significance, at least so far as his perception of the judicial process, the electoral process, the democratic process, and the activism that might exist within it. And in equating the religious institution, right there with the government institution,
because then they were one and the same.
Sure. One time there was no government. It was just the church. Yeah. You know what I mean?
The faith and the crown is the twin pillars which fucking society rests upon.
What he said. What I'm saying is, it is.
I just watched like 2 seasons of Game of Thrones.
Oh, is that what it is?
5 days,
I still haven't seen any of that. But what I'm saying is, the type of faith that an individual would have in their church is what I essentially equate the type of faith that anymore, wasn't necessarily always like this, but anymore I kind of equate that very same faith that individuals have in not just the government, but the very individual candidates that they choose to support. You know what I mean? Like, again, it all comes back down to the whole idea of political theater. And I don't necessarily expect that every one of these, the figureheads of most of these institutions, I don't necessarily know that they are ultimately concerned with bettering the institutional support.
Well, they're concerned with controlling the institution.
Well, and sure. I mean, that's not necessarily subject to argument. What I'm saying is there is ultimately a corruptive element that they're in each one.
Yes.
And
corruption knows no bounds when it comes to these brainwashing and mind controlling institutions.
Well, I mean, just in general, I mean, it's corruption is relative to humanity. It's the human element that is corrupt. It's not necessarily any political doctrine or any fucking religion or any media conglomerate. It's just corruption. More for me and mine. Who cares about the other guy, as long as I know that that's
yet another primitive and crude thought process that we are all
you could say that
part of.
You could say that.
Unfortunately,
you could say that, but I think what would make it sounds as if though that the alternative would suggest that there is a never-ending supply of resources in order for everybody to get their fill, and that's not the case.
Well, of course it's not the case.
There was some shit that we were talking about a moment ago that kind of got derailed off into the whole idea of privilege. And if the United States and its society were to be privileged in any respect, you could imagine that it was due in part by, due in part from, I guess it's the history that would put it in the beneficial position that it was economically towards we'll say the middle of the 20th century. Mm-hmm. We like to think that we're philanthropic in a lot of respects, and that idea that we're philanthropic in a lot of respects comes from a lot of, because you always hear about guys, we give so much money and support to X country and stuff, and from what I understand, that is actually true. at least as compared to other countries that might be supplying aid. But then when you take into consideration, it's like
It's actually way too much.
Well, I would not only would I agree there, but there's a disproportionality I think that exists between like what could be given to but is it? It's not just because we can eat doesn't mean that it's our job to feed everybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm definitely not down with the whole policeman of the world kind of thing. But
no, of course not. Why is that even a thing? You know why? Because of corporate interests. Why do we give Israel all that money?
I don't know what corporate interests the United States has with Israel, unless you're suggesting maybe some economical benefits to maybe selling them arms. But for last I heard, I mean, we gave like what $19 billion a year for since 1948.
Yep.
Has been,
and of course, I think it's more since then, right?
I haven't kept up.
Why are we even on the side of the Israelis? Because they're the ones that are essentially on the side of the belligerents.
Belligerents?
Is that the right word?
Belligerence just means you're talking and using a lot of dirty language like I do. Belligerence is like...
What's the word? The antagonist.
Well, I mean, who's to say? Because this comes back down to the whole concept of, it was my land first, it was my land first. No, it was my land first. No, it was my land first. Dude, this is not, who was there first is not for me to know or to give a shit. I know that both of the cornerstones of the argument is relative to some type of religious claim. Don't know exactly what it is.
Interesting that you should bring that up.
Well, I mean, there's certainly there's a religious connotation behind the United States support for Israel. But see, I mean, if it is a religious claim, and I've actually had this conversation a lot. I don't necessarily have a problem with alignment with the Israelis in regards to the future of this event that we got going on before us globally. I don't have a problem with that if we were honest about it, but we're not honest about it. If we were to say, hey, these guys, they're pretty badass. And they've been pretty badass for a pretty long time. With a little assistance, we've given them a little help. And they got this thing going on here. It's a contested area. Might need to maintain it with some fucking arms every now and again. But what this is going to do is serve us as a strategic garrison in a very hostile region to further expand our influences.
And that would be the truth.
Militarily speaking, if need be. Now, if that was the truth that you could speak upon to the United States, I think other people would be like, oh, okay, that's it. All right, fuck
But
yeah.
what are they doing?
Well, there's the whole...
In terms of lying.
Well, I mean, shit. And this is where I get to evoke the name of Mr. Norman Finkelstein. Oh, man. This dude is a beast. If you guys don't know who Norman Finkelstein is, shit.
Go on YouTube and type in Alan Dershowitz, Norman Finkelstein, Democracy Now!
Awesome. It's such a good... Finkelstein owns and destroys, as you could certainly expect. But still, I love watching old men... And I say this live. I love watching old men engage in, heated argument and watching their veins bulge out, and you can watch them furrow their brows as they're protracting their arguments against each other, and just in any case, Norman Finkelstein.
Like Vidal versus fucking Buckley.
I don't know specifically. I don't.
No, you don't know about that. I'll have to send you some shit relating to that.
Send me the shit.
But yeah, religion, man.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm trying to dip back to Finkelstein because I don't remember why I brought up Finkelstein, but it was relative to No, there was
because I was asking you the lies that they're telling us instead of the truth.
Well, oh man, but no, but oh yeah, okay. Well, now here in my pleading to authority, Finkelstein being said authority, and any of the information that I am trying to recount for you, because I can't remember specifically, nor will I be able to quote him verbatim. But if I'm not mistaken, through resources that he cited in a clip that I've watched previously, he said something to the effect that there has been a propaganda campaign essentially since, I want to say, the 1950s, shortly after, I guess, what was it, the proliferation of Israel. Finkelstein would cite that there were a few mentions of the word, I think it was Judeo-Christian, and if I'm not mistaken, this was cited to be the beginning of a series of examples to which a person could draw from and cite literally, to where that would like further the. Well, there was a couple different things that it did, and the most primary thing was to help Jewish Americans assimilate into American culture and help American culture allow for the assimilation of Jews into its culture, vice versa, in both of them. So then there's that, but also what this served to do is it established the notion that there is a relationship or some type of bond beyond the ultimate Abrahamic influence that Israel, a state of a state specifically, is it for Judaism? Because the ultimate understanding is certainly escaped me, but primary concepts I got a decent latch on to. So the whole idea of it being a religious ideology, established a state. It's a religious state is essentially what it is. Specifically, I mean, it's kind of like the Jewish version of its biggest neighbor or biggest enemy, Iran, right? Isn't that in Iran? Or
well,
I know
Palestine would be their biggest enemy right now, right?
I don't think they're. To be honest with you, I don't know how. They're badass, dude. I am a big fan of giving credit where credit's due, and the Israelis are bad fucking ass, dude. Like, as small of a geography that they have and what they've been able to do. I mean, you get attacked by your 3 nearest neighbors, and you take 7 miles of territory in each direction. You're doing something right. You know what I mean? So again, credit goes where I think it's deserved, but the religious incorporation of ideas into the establishment of a state and the relationship of the United States and Israel, that notion has been established and has been fostered and fomented since, I want to say, the 1950s. Incidentally, if I'm not mistaken, it's right around the same time the whole "In God We Trust" would be officiated on our money. And again,
Pledge of Allegiance
under God, no longer just indivisible. It had to be under God. See, but this is again seeding. It's like think of a whole plowed field, and there's rows of different ideas that are just seeded, and each fucking synapse, as a thought travels, and it's got to go through all of these different little, waypoints to get. It's a truly profound thing. But that being said, Finkelstein comes through in a clutch, dude. He will keep you on point so far as keeping the record straight, and he's got the background to tell you that your fabricated arguments that have been fostered by illegitimate representation, they really don't stand up to actual factual experience to which Finkelstein can boast, and I'm thankful for his authority to plead to the end.
Right now, we are going to take a short break, and let me remind you that we are in the shade of Brilliance. Myself, Sean Rowe. We got Sam Metal Daniels over here, the Delaware Destroyer. But we will be right back.
What's up, Pod Nation? It's Chris here from the World Wrestling Talk podcast, and we want to bring you the best talk in wrestling. Analysis, reports, anything that we can think of that you want to hear about wrestling, we got it. So tune in to the World Wrestling Talk podcast brought to you by Pod Nation.
This is Andy from Game Grok. If you guys are into comics, movies, and other nerdy pursuits, at the Pod Nation label, we have a show called Comic Cave with my good friends Chris and Russ. Check it out for your fill of comics and comic-related news. Links can be found down below.
All right, everybody, welcome back to In the Shade of Brilliance, brought to you by Pod Nation Media.
Pod Nation.
With Sam Daniels, and I am Sean Rowe. Imagine, if you will, a society in which the population is subjected to mind control and brainwashing through various institutions and whatnot. Well, you know, we're here to tell you that we're living in such a society.
I was trying to think what kind of institutions are most prevalent, like in my mind, like things I got to worry about. So, I mean, money is definitely an issue. I'm definitely an indentured servant. I owe money for my student loans and such.
Indentured servant, that's interesting that you talk about that. I mean, everybody's basically a slave, wage slave at this point.
No argument. Well, I mean, yeah, but I guess not to be a technical specific, but or be technically specific, but I guess the difference between an indentured servant and a slave is a slave got all their clothes and home provided for them by the owner, whereas indentured servants gotta pay for their own clothes, pay for their own shelter, and essentially you got to pay it to the people who are, you know, in positions where they would be able to maintain a slave system as well. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure the analogy goes that you protect and maintain your property. So if an individual, i.e. slave, was your property, you're certainly going to treat it better than an indentured servant who you're not having to pay for their health and well-being and their food and their shelter and clothes and all that. But in either case, I guess both are going to work for it, regardless. I don't know. So we were talking about, just to recap, we were talking about the institutions, various institutions of mind control. Money is a big subject on my mind. I would suggest that by proxy, so is the church and or religion. Not necessarily because I'm religious. In fact, I'm considerably anti-religious, and you could probably have already picked up on that. But because we live in a society there's an omnipresence of its influence or its projection and or gleeful reception in the case of some of these mega churches, that's kind of infuriating, and through 501c3 tax status get to completely, just live off of it.
There's corporations, there's the educational system, there's the media.
Well, it's interesting how my money issue is relative to the education that I'm still trying to finance.
There's addictions, there's various addictions, there's culture.
I'm a victim of culture, man. What are you going to tell me? Or what am I going to tell you?
But no, you were just talking about the money and all that kind of shit. Well, there are certain jobs that, one will have in which the job will take control of their life.
Well, what's that quote that the wizard gave? All right, Robert De Niro is in that awesome movie that you may or may not know called Taxi Driver. And in it, when he was trying to consult with his coworker, as the main character, Robert De Niro, is conflicted, he's psychologically conflicted to say the very least, and he tries to seek the counsel of this coworker called the Wizard, who he presumes might have some type of wisdom, as he was like an older guy, been around the block a little bit more, might know a little bit more about life, might be able to provide him with some advice. So he goes to the Wizard and he's telling him about how he's got some bad ideas in his head, and the Wizard kind of spiels off into a series of digressions as he's trying to really interpret what he's just been presented with by this coworker who's kind of a little psychologically off base, and it's it's something that is interpreted to be understood. So he kind of deviates from any in his answer, his response to him, he kind of deviates back to the point that a man takes a job and he becomes the job. Man becomes what that is. One guy's a doctor, another guy's a lawyer. One guy lives in such and such, another guy lives over here. It's like you take on the occupation, and because we are defined by our actions, and that's what you do, then that's what you are, right? So, I mean, in that respect, you were talking about addiction being an institution. Well, yeah, in terms of a cultural respect, for sure, and it's one that historically, the one that I'll own up to, the cigarettes, man. Like we were talking about Bernays and his pushing of cigarettes in Hollywood, and his liberating women with the torches of freedom during the Macy's Day Parade or Macy's Parade or whatever, Easter Day Parade in New York, so long ago. I can't even remember the year, but you get the point. You know what I mean? Like, so culturally, it was something that was probably still being culturally celebrated and associated with, I don't know, a certain, character or archetype. And I mean, the whole idea that by that point, the entire household and extended family, they all smoked too, so it was a habit that was easy to gravitate towards. Well, I didn't start smoking without the foresight that it could potentially be addicting, and well, here's something interesting about addiction. Nobody gets addicted to shit that they don't like. Go figure that one out. But yeah, the whole idea, I mean, dude, there's an entire industry, a corporation that is and this is relative to the greater conversation about mind control and institutions. And when you take into consideration that there's a couple institutions that are solely and specifically devoted towards mind control. If I were to say, dude, if I told you how many cigarettes I've ever smoked when I was stressed out, well, why am I smoking it? Because I'm trying to alleviate my mind and anxiety, regardless whether it actually does it or not. As I was saying to Sean earlier during the commercial break, I don't know that it helps me think, but it makes me think like it helps me think. So that's why I do it. It's
a good thing that you're not addicted to a drug that like pulls you away from society to where like you can't even function normally.
Well, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people would suggest that
like at least it's not heroin.
Well, but okay, which brings us back to the pathological rationale, the psychological term. I'm glad you said that, because it brings us back to the pathological rationalization and how that's such a key aspect of the id, the ego. And well, interestingly enough, we're talking about the institution of media and the culture that it influences. Due in part by the corporations that they're paid by, or paid for, and or financed and produced by, so on and so forth. And we're talking about culture as it relates to the media's production of like a cult of personality. And when you consider the type of egocentric narcissism that's being exemplified,
you'll see characters on TV and then you like relate to it.
Well, not necessarily, and this is just interestingly enough, this is how the pathological rationale works. If you're constantly exposed to people whose ethical standard or moral compass is far more fucked up than yours, every time you're pitted with a comparable scenario, I don't know if that was the best choice of words, but anytime you might come across a comparable circumstance and you act in a manner that is, say, inconsistent with what you all have an understanding so far as your social, personal, and moral responsibility to the community and yourself and your family and everything. Like once you make that rational leap in terms of in terms of that type of behavior, you more or less are succumbing to your own ego. And in a lot of respects, I think that people who succumb to their ego, and it's not necessarily I think it's an opinion. I'm pretty certain that this is how it is, that if an individual succumbs to their own ego and, produces a, folly in that effort, then they, by definition, are, idiots, if that's not the case. Ego, idiot. You got me? I think the viewers...
That's the etymology?
I think pretty sure it's as consistent as I anticipate it to be. Where else were we? Because we were going from church to corporations, the education, and how that related to the banks. I've never really had too much experience with the judicial.
Well,
system.
actually, I did want to talk about the educational system because I was reading a book called Friendly Fascism, and it was by Bertram Gross, who actually worked in the White House, but he essentially predicted, because this book was written in the 80s, he predicted the American society that we're living in today, and he calls it a friendly fascist society where, all of the attributes of fascism are there, but on a very subtle level. You can't even realize it unless it's, unless you really think about it. He did talk about the educational system. He said that the entire educational system itself may be seen as a mammoth set of disciplined activities that, irrespective of any specific indoctrination of knowledge or programming of skills, can help produce docile, accepting personalities.
So it comes back down to the manufacturing of a society of people that aren't going to rock the boat.
Yeah, so I'll just use high school as an example because it's much easier. So you go and you wake up, you go to class, and then you have like the periods, your different classes, and then the bell rings, and then you go to your next class, and then so on, and then you go to lunch, and then you have the other ones, and then you leave. It's like trying to emulate what you're going to be doing for the rest of your life in a very controlled manner. And then while you're even there, you're going to be try to be forced to think a certain way, which is what they're preparing you to do, to think a certain way.
I wish I had an argument for them, but I don't, folks. But
the
how
educational system, that's what it's come to. That's what it's come to.
But how else can you condition a society? I mean, you need to get everybody on the same page. It kind of sucks that there's a perversion of what might be required to be on said page that you're getting everybody on. But the institution. I mean, is that to suggest that the institutions are antiquated?
I have been saying that a whole bunch of the institutions are primitive, just completely, and we need to essentially move on from. And I'm not saying move on from the educational system at all. I'm saying that we need to renovate that shit completely.
Retrofit it
completely. The United States having really bad scores in education in comparison with other countries.
Math and science is
that's no joke, and especially what you said, math and science, that's the future essentially, and we're letting the future be controlled by other fucking entities.
I won't be here. Will you or your kids? Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah. And speaking of education, what was really fucked up was whenever Marco Rubio in one of the presidential debates, he said that we need more welders or, it was something like that, like a trade, He's we need some more welders because welders make more than philosophers. We should have less philosophers. And he's saying that, it's better to be that kind of worker than somebody with an academic background. That makes no sense, especially when like the people backing him were like philosophers and historians and, you know, professors of that nature, neocons, basically.
So
and,
he bit the hand that fed him?
well, he didn't bite it. He's like, they told him to say that.
The
Because
philosophers?
they want that society where there's no people that know how to think. They don't want that like academic society. They want like a society of fucking welders and, you know, workers.
Well,
You know
I
what I'm
mean,
saying?
hey man, my dad was a welder.
Oh, well, I mean, I know welders, and I'm not talking shit about welders.
Of course, I know.
I'm just
not,
saying that what he said was wrong
Well, I mean, I don't like.
because they looked up how much those two jobs made, and like the person with the philosophy degree, that's just the degree. That doesn't mean, oh, I'm gonna move on and I'm gonna become a philosopher. That just means
Like I got
that-
my philosophy degree now. Give me the respect and of Nietzsche.
Exactly. Like he goes on, he probably is gonna work like in a corporation or some shit. The fact is that he has a higher education. That's all it is. And he was like subverting that, you know.
Okay, I see what you're saying. I don't know. I can appreciate though that you need growth. You need buildings. I mean, at the very least, you need a building to have a philosophy class, right?
Yeah. I mean, but who creates the building? Who designs the building? Architects, civil engineers. Like the building wouldn't even be built by the workers unless those people designed it, came up with it.
I'm in no position to argue. I mean, because this is actually consistent with the whole notion of a philosophy. I mean, you're talking about philosophy. I mean, it's consistent with the whole philosophical metaphor that I've found to be consistently, consistent. That very thing, consistency, and it's all about consistency. Where I'm coming from, and in terms of the root source of ideas and the idea that we're more or less a society as small and insignificant as Sean might like to eagerly point out. You know, I mean, where we're at are a society that stands or rests on the shoulders of giants. We're midgets upon the shoulders of giants.
No, everybody is standing on the shoulders of midgets.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, everybody is. Because what you're supposed to do is like do what Isaac Newton said, you know. If I am seeing beyond other people, if I am essentially getting the work done that I'm doing, it's only by standing upon the shoulders of giants and learning from significant people that will allow you to grow yourself and then get your own things done.
Sure, but in the metaphor that the leaps and bounds of the great thinkers and doers of great things that people have thunk up, isn't that the whole idea though, that these individuals who, I mean, were literally at this point the proliferating fruit on the branches of a tree that, that's rooted in, eons worth of intellectual growth and philosophical growth and technological growth and whole lots of other types of growth that I couldn't readily drop. But I figured the rule of three, which I dropped right there. I figured that would get me so far as into the argument as I need to go. I don't necessarily know that there's an argument really to be had, but I wasn't aware that Newton said that.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that was Isaac Newton who said that.
He'd be in the Hall of Great Humanity along with Carlin and Kubrick, and you put in Einstein in there and Tesla.
I was just listening to another podcast. It was Sam Harris's podcast, and he was talking to Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he asked him, like, if aliens visited us, who would be the human being that we would send as our emissary to communicate with the said aliens? And Neil deGrasse Tyson was like, oh, Isaac Newton. Like, because Sam Harris was like, who's the smartest human being, in your opinion, obviously. And Neil deGrasse Tyson said Isaac Newton, like, number one, without question. He's the emissary.
I understand that he had accomplished very much before he was very old. I understand that he didn't he develop?
Yeah.
I want to say trigonometry or
Calculus.
something. Calculus on
Him and Gottfried Leibniz.
It was like on a
separately.
Bet. Wasn't it on a bet or something? Like
I think so.
There was a wager or something.
Yeah. Basically invented calculus. You know, he came up with the theory of gravity. Of course, relativity, you know, replaced his theory of gravity, but nonetheless, you know.
Can't we send Caitlyn Jenner?
What about her?
She can be the emissary to the aliens.
Ah, yes. Didn't she come out and say that she was Republican?
I have no idea. I have no clue whatsoever.
Yeah, I think she did. Either ways, that's part of culture.
Indeed, it is. Cult of personality.
Trying to, you know, create reality TV shows that allow you to focus on other people, and it's very like fraudulent method of getting to focus on other people, because like you said, people will act a certain way if they have a camera or mic in front of them, and the reality shows are essentially just that. They're just being that way because there's a camera there.
And in a lot of cases, I mean, the
just,
producers certainly have a hand in the manipulation of how those reality shows are produced. Not that I have any professional experience into it, but so far as I've looked into it as much as I can from the outside, and having a little bit of, I guess you could say, insight to the whole nature of the production of television through my time in school, and speaking with others who have gone on to experience their their careers in certain fields.
And of course, TV, is just probably the main method when it comes to like the institution of media. Like a TV is on in like a family's house for hours every day.
Yeah.
There's certain channels that are just on in the background, like CNN and like all the mainstream media, which like picks and chooses what they want you to know and whatnot. And then like there's like the programming itself, which has like the fictional programming, like the sitcoms and the dramas and stuff, which like portray society a certain way that like tries to get you to emulate that.
In that way, if you were to emulate a sitcom in the past 20 years, you're going to be very homogenized in terms of your approach to life, for sure. I mean, it's very suburban in most, if not all respects. It's very, I don't know, I almost dropped some corporate names and I don't want to give any more credence or attention to the actual names of the app or a crew, if I may. These types of, it's just like so manicured and stylized, and I don't know, man, like TV shows today are nothing like sitcoms specifically are nothing like they used to be. I remember, growing up and watching all sorts of shows that dealt with a lot of subject matter that by today's standards and practices, you'd never have that in like a show for kids after school. It's just a completely different landscape today, where for the uttermost part, a lot of the ideas, the laugh tracks are the most insulting.
Society. You have to dumb down society. You have to demoralize them. You have to.
That's been very demoralizing. Yeah. I feel, in fact, my whole interest in pursuing film and video was just to gain a little, I wanted to, idealize the notion of making films, and perhaps that time will come as well. But the whole idea was to kind of affect an industry that, for whatever reason, and keep in mind, I'm taking this back to like 96, 97, 98, 99, and you watch these movies that might be on your cable channels, and like, unless it's like a blockbuster, and they always play like the most intellectually devoid films, You know, that, and not saying that everything's
Exactly.
but I'm not saying that everything's got to be, you know, so intellectually stimulating that only a person, and keep in mind I didn't even have a degree then. I would, in fact, yeah, I only been a college or a high school graduate at that point. And if I'm feeling like my intelligence is being insulted by, you know, a narrative that has been designed to entertain, you know, age bracket of 18 to 24, and I just turned 18, well, I'm a little fucking annoyed, you know?
Yeah, and that's like the same thing with like so-called documentaries, you know? Like the documentaries that are on the channels that are owned by corporations, like the media conglomerates that we talked about in the last episode. Like, for example, Ancient Aliens. Unsealed alien files, and like supposedly, I mean, those ones are on the History Channel, but supposedly there's things, programming of that nature that's on the fucking Science Channel, and it's not even fucking science.
It's pseudoscience.
It's like couldn't be so far from science. Read The Demon Haunted World by Carl Sagan, and you'll be doing yourself a favor.
Do that shit. He's very well read. I used to read. I haven't read in years, actually. I need to get brushed up on my dictionaries.
But media, dude, media. Like, you know what I just thought of? Fucking video games, man.
For sure, newest
fucking video
advent to
games.
media.
You know, because you can have the console, your home console, and then you can just like pull out your smartphone and then play a video game on there. That's
So escapism is essentially what it comes down
escapism, like the addiction
to. For sure.
institution, and just living in a fantasy land and just living in a bubble, you know, and that shit is dangerous, man.
Well, I mean, I have no. Again, there's not necessarily a point to be argued. It's pretty as cut and dry as it sounds. You know, in one respect or another. I don't know to what other extent we really need to emphasize. I'll tell you what, on our Facebook page, on and or on YouTube, if you guys could, if you have any questions, comments, criticisms, what have you, send us your feedback, because we're curious to know. I'm curious to know. I'm kind of defying it and offering you a chance to enlighten me, because off the cuff, I'm not really coming up with too many more institutions that you know that. I mean, I'm not saying that all of them are not. I'm not saying that any of them don't pertain to mind control. I'm saying that they all do. I'm just running short of institutions to think of. Mm-hmm. I mean, we did talk about as it would relate to the manipulation of. Okay, you had sex as being the the. And I don't know, any exacerbation through culture, media, and emphasis that's placed upon the mind, you know, as it relates to that, as it also relates to these two other institutions that, you know, I don't know if we really, sunk our teeth into too much, but first and foremost, we'll go with, I'd rather actually go with parenthood before I went with marriage, because you don't need marriage to be engaged in parenthood.
True. And then whenever you combine parenthood with, like, you know, the types of jobs that take over your life, then you are essentially trapped in that same stage for the rest of your life. You know, you concern yourself just with those two things, which is what the establishment wants you to do so that they can continue pursuing their agenda.
I'm not saying that you shouldn't, if you have a kid, you shouldn't make that kid your world.
No.
Because that's actually what you should do. It's just there happens to be an institution ready to capitalize off of your preoccupation with your world.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like, you of course do all that fucking normal shit, you know, where they're like your life and everything. But I mean, like, you can still have like your own identity and whatnot. You know, like, you can choose not to play into what role they want you to play into. You know.
Well, see, and this is where I don't know to what extent there is any tangible escape. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. There's no way out. It's a paradox, a series of paradoxes. I wish I could be more optimistic for you, but
I mean, you're just telling the truth.
Well, exactly. I mean, I'm definitely more in touch with my finer senses of realism.
But you know what was interesting was that Yuri Bezmenov, that old 80s interview that he did where...
the 4 steps of mind control?
The 4 steps of mind control. You know, he was like saying you have to demoralize a generation.
Do you have the outline
that
of what
takes,
he specifically said? It
that
takes like a generation, 15 years?
20 years to do. And then you have to destabilize the nation. You have to, you know, the economy has to be messed with, you know, the foreign policies, the...
and the international credibility has to
the
kind of
military-industrial complex.
And then he's talking about the introduction of a crisis to stigmatize the
introduction
nation.
Of a crisis,
and then the post-crisis phase where everything becomes... when everything calms down after the crisis, and this post-crisis existence is
period
called...
of normalization.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Dude, you know what? It's such a good video. We should probably put that on.
I put it on our website.
On the website itself?
On like not the Facebook page, but on the website. But I mean, we should probably share it on Facebook too.
Well, how about we show it to him right now?
But in reality, the main emphasis of the KGB is not in the area of intelligence at all. According to my opinion and opinion of many defectors of my caliber, only about 15% of time, money, and manpower is spent on espionage as such. The other 85% is a slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in 4 basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate 1 generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The result you can see. Most of the people who graduated in the 60s, dropouts or half-baked intellectuals, are now occupying the positions of power in the government, civil service, business, mass media, educational system. You are stuck with them. You cannot get rid of them. They are contaminated. They are programmed to think and react to certain stimuli in a certain pattern. You cannot change their mind, even if you expose them to authentic information, even if you prove that white is white and black is black, you still cannot change the basic perception and the logic of behavior. In other words, these people, the process of demoralization is complete and irreversible. To get rid society of these people, you need another 20 or 15 years to educate a new generation of patriotically minded and common sense people who would be acting in favor and in the interests of the United States society.
And yet these people who've been programmed and, as you say, in place and who are favorable to an opening with the Soviet concept, these are the very people who would be marked for extermination in this country?
Most of them, yes. Simply because the psychological shock when they will see in future what the beautiful society of equality and social justice means in practice, obviously they will revolt. They will be very unhappy, frustrated people. And the Marxist-Leninist regime does not tolerate these people. They will join the links of dissenters, dissidents.
Yes.
Unlike in present United States, there will be no place for dissent in future Marxist-Leninist America. Here you can get popular like Daniel Ellsberg and filthy rich like Jane Fonda for being dissident, for criticizing your Pentagon. In future, these people will be simply squashed like cockroaches. Nobody is going to pay them nothing for their beautiful, noble ideas of equality. This they don't understand, and it will be a greatest shock for them, of course. The demoralization process in the United States is basically completed already. For the last 25 years, actually it's overfulfilled, because demoralization now reaches such areas where previously not even Comrade Andropov and all his experts would even dream of such a tremendous success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom. When a military boot crashes then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragic of the situation of demoralization.
I really wanted to bring up the management of savagery. I know I've been talking about it a lot.
Yeah, dude, can we... I don't have a problem if I'm not present. Just keep looking at the camera, and it'll be my excuse because I'm over here being a fucking cigarette junkie.
This guy.
We're still recording, and
so the management of savagery is a text, and I'm not going to say who wrote it because I'm not going to get that far into it. But essentially, it's a Islamic State text that is used for recruiting, and it is called The Management of Savagery, the most critical stage through which the Ummah will pass.
What's the Ummah?
The Ummah is the single group that shares common religious beliefs, specifically those that are the objects of a divine plan of salvation.
So essentially, they are part of the jihad.
Yes,
Gotcha.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
So it's separated into 5 topics. And there's an introduction before the first topic, and the introduction is the order that has governed the world since the Sykes-Picot era. And for those of you that don't know, the Sykes-Picot Treaty happened after the Ottoman Empire was dissolved, and it essentially separated the Middle East into areas that were defined by the English and whoever else was involved. I think it was France and Russia. But either ways, they imposed their will upon the Middle East in that respect. So they drew their own boundaries and separated the Middle East according to how they wanted to. And so that fucked everything up. First of all, they imposed culture. They were taking control without, permission, essentially. And so, yeah, the preface talks about how, that's cause for alarm. Like, what if somebody did that to the United States? Like, people would be pissed off. And the first topic was, it defined the management of savagery, and it's a overview of its historical precedents. So it, talked about the various Islamic states in the past, right? Like the various, I don't want to go so far as to call them like caliphates, but the momentous events that would be considered that same aspect, like jihad. Mm-hmm. He definitely talked about Al Qaeda in that respect, and same thing with ISIS, how we created ISIS by leaving vacuums and all that kind of thing. Right. We created Al Qaeda as well, which is like the like existing form of ISIS, because in the 80s, you know, we angered so many people in the Middle East by invading them and all that kind of shit. One of the people that we angered was Osama bin Laden. He tried to create like some, you know, group, and then Saudi Arabia like discredited him for that and banished him essentially. And then he went on to create Al Qaeda. So we created Al Qaeda, you know, and that's something that I wanted to bring up about. I mean, I'm gonna get back to the management of savagery just like in a couple of seconds, but about 9/11, all those people that say that it's like an inside job, or they use like some kind of terminology of that nature, or they like come up with like all these theories and stuff, like that kind of stuff is essentially moot. Because if we created Al Qaeda, then who cares? Like if we did 9/11, like either ways we did it. Essentially.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. That's an interesting angle. I
yeah.
hadn't considered that.
The second topic is the path for establishing an Islamic State.
But so they already did that though.
Huh?
But
well, this was released in 2006.
Okay. I mean, I think that was pretty much their radicalized Islam's agenda for a while. So I mean, it doesn't surprise me that that's in text.
Correct. But it's you know, once again, it's specifically for like Daesh, right? ISIS, like that specific group.
I got you.
So the second topic, it lays that out, you know, like how they're gonna do it and shit. And the third topic is the principles, the policies, the goals of the stage of the power of vexation and exhaustion, which is in certain areas they're still in that stage, the power of vexation and exhaustion stage, and the stage after that is the management of savagery. And
well, what exactly does the management of savagery entail?
Okay, so the management of savagery means that they are going to cause chaos and then administrate that chaos. They are going to manage that chaos.
In the same respect, that the elites of our society would be accused of cause-effect solutionism, where they create the problem and have a readily
doubt that that's how they came out.
No
doubt that that's how they came up with this system. Well, they came up with this text.
So
they're like emulating things
that's
that
what
have already happened.
Do you think they're emulating? Which came first, the chicken or the egg? You know, I'm in no position to suggest, but I can only imagine. I mean, like, this is coming from a hemisphere where religious infighting has been going on for centuries upon centuries upon centuries, and then some. Mm-hmm. So I can only imagine that there being an established context for waging such a religiously motivated and fundamentally charged type of endeavor. Yeah, dude, I would imagine you'd have to have some type of well thought out, I don't know, a plan of action, if you will. And actually, I mean, considering that this is, this landscape, this war, okay, yeah, there's a lot of physical aspects to it, but the primary battlefield is the mind. It's like Alex Jones talks about, InfoWars says it all, man. And we were in a landscape that's rife in terms of information warfare, and the war is on for the control of your mind, and the allegiance that you say to the nation state, or to the loyalty you have to the brand of shoe that you wear, or what information sources you take on as being credible. That's just where it is. And these guys, they understand that there's a benefit to their particular kind of warfare. We were talking about, okay, you were referencing that guy that we ran into at the metal show earlier, and you said, I got a call from my brother right around the time that I had asked the guy, or I was about to speak upon the difference between, or a compare and contrast dialogue that in which I was going to pose the idea that there's a series of benefits and shortcomings of the different types of combatants that the information war has before it. Okay, you got if you got a nation state. I'm coming back. I'm almost done. But like, if you got a nation state that is primarily, funding its army, and that nation state's got lots of, it's got lots of money afforded to it. It's got various institutions that have been established to streamline and make for a more effective war machine. It's got all that and the proverbial bag of chips as well. Whereas the unconventional fighter, I mean, dude, you're dealing with a ragtag assemblage of individuals who, I mean, shit, dude, they might not even, they have about as much experience as a fucking Boy Scout, if that, but they might have some real life experience. Like, I remember back in the day, this is actually in regards to, I guess, Israel, but it's a hot spot as well as most of the places you could imagine some of these fundamentalists might be coming from. I'm not saying they're coming from necessarily from Israel, but coming from the Middle East in general. But Pee Wee Herman, he said in one skit he was taking I don't know, he had like international pen pals or something, and he had this one from this like a 8-year-old in Israel, and he says, "Hi, my name is Shlomo. I'm only 8, and I've been in the army for 4 years already." And that's a testament to the point of experience. Yeah, dude, you got motherfuckers that today, might go and do some heinous shit in a crowded location. They don't need the training. They don't need the, you know what I'm saying? So
in this though, there's like a basic, like in one of the topics, there's like a basic training manual, as it were, though, on the various strategies and whatnot, which is, and another point of this text is that if I were to imagine myself in the Islamic world, like, these people bring up so many good points. They do.
In terms of
what?
What?
They bring up in terms of the Western world trying to impose, what Condoleezza Rice called the paradigm of progress, the neoliberal agenda onto the Middle East, and just that whole thing about what I just said. If people were to come into the United States and impose things to us, like, we would revolt. You know what I'm saying? The only thing that's misguided on their part is about how everything is about religion. That's like the only thing that's misguided. It's like they're that's how they're so effective, is that they're releasing things like this. They bring up good points, and then they also say that if you do this, then you'll be a martyr, right? That you'll die and then like immediately go to paradise, and then since you have done this for your group, you will automatically be allowed, quite conveniently, by the way, to take like 60 people with you whenever they die. Because there's I was listening to another Sam Harris podcast where he said that like there's some kind of section in the Quran where it said, well, isn't like suicide illegal? Like, you can't do that. But it's like, but if it's for this, then apparently it's not. Shit.
There was a awesome, and you're gonna have to look into this one because it is pretty fucking cool. There's this movie called I think it's called Cult of the Suicide Bomber, and CIA operative, I want to say Rob Baer. This is actually worth finding out. But in Cult of the Suicide Bomber, but there's another term for it too. I can't remember, or the birth of the suicide bomber, or something like that. Jack Bear, I can't remember. Bear is the dude's last name though. That's for sure. And he more or less traces the origins and roots of of that type of thing of martyrdom, and they definitely don't consider it suicide. Suicide is definitely, in fact, like, it's kind of interesting. I mean, it's a play on words. Suicide bomber. Okay, well, he's suiciding himself to bomb the enemy. Okay, I get it. But well, actually, I don't even know that there is a but. Like I said, in the movie, though, he traces the roots of all that, and I think it goes back as far as to Iran. Iran had a war with Iraq. I guess I don't know exactly what was going on, but I'm pretty sure those are the territories. Might have been some other ones, but there was an underclassed army, and the utilization. I think it was the Ayatollah in Iran suggested at the time that the utilization of martyrdom be employed, because if we don't, we're not going to win. And that's when you'd have motherfuckers storming over the trenches, like circa bonsai attacks in World War II, off of some Pacific island, to where they would just, storm tanks with knives and shit, so. And I don't think that kind of thing. And keep in mind, I mean, this is like a religiously appointed action, which is also coincidentally religiously rewarded action. So, coming back to this point, this is all religiously oriented. I mean, the Pope was mocked, if I'm not mistaken. There were reports that ISIS, key members, I guess, of ISIS were mocking the Pope in his lack of appreciation that was suggested he made in statements, when he was suggesting that the conflict that we're engaged in now is not a holy conflict. You see what I'm saying? So, I mean, there's not even an acknowledgement.
He hasn't read The Management of Savagery?
Apparently not. I don't know what to tell you. I've heard some people say that this is the least popely pope we've had in a long time.
But, I mean, he
when I say
says
we,
a lot
I mean,
of truthful shit, though, man.
Who, the Pope?
Yeah.
What's he say?
Like, there was this one quote where he said that, everybody has their own church. Like, for some, nature can be a church. There have been things that have been done in God's name that are for the common good, and by the way, I'm paraphrasing this quote.
He's para-fucking phrasing.
And some of the worst deeds have been done in his name. Like, Pope Francis said that, and that's completely true. To, in the same paragraph say that, nature and the universe can be your church, and that the worst deeds in human history have been done in God's name. I mean, you can't get any more truthful than that.
Yeah, I mean, but and this comes back to what was I thought we didn't have an argument, but we definitely came to as to whether or not war was necessary, right? And that there was we had a bit of a stipulation as in terms.
I don't think that was it. It was something else. I think I forgot what it was though.
Or you said you said it was antiquated or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Which,
I said so many things.
And that's the thing. I say so many things and I forget what I said. Fortunately, most conversations that I have are kind of cyclical and it'll come right back around.
I don't think it was war though.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I don't know. In the fundamental respect, I think it might be antiquatable. Mm-hmm. It's not to say that it can't be eventually outmoded on within the planet, but
I'm just saying that all the reasoning behind it itself is antiquated, itself is primitive, which by the transitive property makes war itself unnecessary. If all the things that it's because of is unnecessary, then it itself is unnecessary. Like, for example, some of the biggest wars that have gone on in modern times have been because of oil. That's fucking retarded.
But it's a resource.
Like people, yeah, but it's a resource that shouldn't even be used anymore. We have all these people and corporations worrying about oil and shit when there's not even going to be oil. There's not even going to be corporations. There's not going to be society whenever climate change or nuclear warfare is upon us.
That was a good point.
Oil is not going to fucking matter. All of their worldly, materialistic incomes and gains aren't going to fucking matter. In this, and I know that you're not involved in the outcome, invested in the outcome, but these people have kids, and they don't even care about that shit.
That's
they're
actually
sending their kids to their deaths.
That's actually
Like
that's
in a
actually
very
an interesting
real way.
That's actually an interesting premise to consider, because even though you could be the CEO of some corporation that benefits from the worsening of the conditions, if they have kids, okay, yeah, they might be able to stand atop a safer spot, than say the poor man, or person rather. That doesn't mean that the world is going to be any less of a garbage can for them to exist within. So, so that's, I can identify with that. And, what's boo and a hiss to all those who contribute to the worsening of the situation.
Yes, a plague upon both your houses.
Yeah, both of them. And I hope...
like your mom's and your dad's.
Yes. What he said.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, damn, dude. So there's a whole fucking pamphlet on how to savagely manage the destruction of our home front.
Mm-hmm. So it's
How many folks domestically that would be aligned with that type of ideology? How many folks do you think have actually read that? Because
not enough.
I don't expect.
I mean, the people that they tried to convert and fight for their cause. But I'm saying that even regular people have to read it. Like how I've read it, how I'm analyzing it and whatnot. Like I'm not going to go out and pursue jihad after I've read this.
Right.
And shit.
Because, but if you wanted to, you'd know how to after having
exactly.
So
which is why people need to read this.
So just to get an idea.
No doubt that the U.S. military has read this.
Like in a know your enemy kind of respect. Okay.
No doubt that the military, the Pentagon, and the security agencies, they've read this. They've analyzed it. So you need to do the same.
So you're saying that despite news reports of, that there are other threats that are far more, at the forefront of the American safety.
This is
concern.
ISIS is actually one of the lower threats. It's
For
just
sure.
important because it's
For the moment,
it's going on a global level. Like the Colonel Andrew Basevich said, ISIS, they don't have an air force, they don't have a navy, they, have all this crude weaponry, and
crude shit. Most of the stuff that they got is high tech as fuck.
But they're riding around in trucks. And Ford pickup trucks and things like that.
Probably get better gas mileage than a Hummer.
Going just another quick.
Another quick what?
What's my cat doing out there?
That's your cat?
Mm-hmm. My adopted.
Is it an outside cat?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, then he's cool.
Mm-hmm. What was I just saying?
I don't know, but they say that white dudes, middle-aged white guys, specifically vets, are a considerable threat to national security and all that stuff.
Oh, no doubt about that.
I mean, is this a situation where it's just for the moment, or do we anticipate great things to come out of ISIS and their efforts domestically? I mean, I can't say that it's not
in the area, in the Islamic world. They will probably have some.
Well, that's what I'm saying. What we're seeing right now is a consistent strain. I mean, daily attacks throughout Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Daily.
Mm-hmm.
Daily.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's getting to the point now where...
What is NATO going to do about it?
I don't expect NATO's going to do a whole hell of a lot. You know what I did hear? I read an article about NATO has I don't know. I almost said NATO has a hard-on for disarming the United States, and I read across an article that said the same thing today. If anybody hears this, send a link or something, because I just glanced over the article earlier today. My bad. Yeah, NATO. I don't think they're going to do much.
No. Yeah. Yeah, that is a problem, especially with these kinds of texts circulating around. It's a scary thought, but the reason why I place it on the lower tier is because climate change and nuclear warfare, those are the gravest threats to mankind.
Well, it's interesting.
Like, we're talking about the sixth extinction here. Like, we're talking about the elimination of the human species.
Well, it's kind of
So
funny.
it kind of takes more precedence a little bit if you are into that kind of
all
thing.
right, okay. Now that's an interesting point to ponder, because if you were to consider the idea of the use of nuclear weapons, okay, well, what degree of nuclear material needs to be used before you say that a nuclear weapon's been utilized? Because depleted uranium is pretty fucking radioactive, last I checked, right? And they've been using that. So there's a good example of nuclear munitions. I mean, on what I would consider a low scale. I did read an article today, and in which they were speaking upon. There is a concern that the United States has downgraded some type of its nuclear weapons, like to make it like smaller or more controlled, or
That's going to be happening soon.
well, what they're
See,
saying
like,
is that because
They're
they can
making the weapons themselves smaller,
well, I mean, regardless what it comes down to,
which means that there's going to be more in total.
well, they're saying
numbers.
that because they are not considering, they are I can pull up the article, but it would take me a minute. They're basically trying to make these more manageable nukes, if you will, and the whole idea is that is such a concern is that because they're smaller and more manageable, and not to be associated with the city leveling type of mega blockbuster things that we get when we think of Hiroshima, Nagasaki,
those are probably
or Bikini
just-
Atoll.
Those are probably just as powerful, though.
I don't know to what extent, but the concern is that there's going to be perhaps a larger degree of likelihood that they would be used if they were smaller and more manageable.
Of course.
So there's a big concern about that, especially, I mean, who knows?
And then there's
where
like
to be
the
used first.
proliferation of them.
Speaking of proliferation, well, look at I guess just yesterday, North Korea tried to launch 2 ballistic missiles, and I guess another one failed. I guess. I mean, but that's the kind of thing. I mean, I guess you only got to get it right once. If you got something on there, could definitely do some damage. I don't know what else we got in mind. I know we wanted to talk about the management of savagery. And I don't know what more to be said, but
my point about that was just about how religion is a major mind controlling institution.
That's not. Yeah, I mean, so far as my perspective, my take, there's no argument whatsoever. That's absolute, without a doubt, not even subject to question. In fact, I would kind of defy someone to suggest that it's not, but I don't expect you to hit us up on the webpage for any of that. So yeah, I mean, look, we're all beholden to some institution or another. We make contracts with these institutions. I think one of the more interesting ideas to consider is, well, while the Catholic Church might not necessarily. Well, actually, I hear that more lately than previously, the Catholic Church has had an issue with recognizing or suggesting there to be any validity to the idea of exorcism and demonic possession. And not necessarily, and this is where I would suggest that there is a metaphoric relationship in terms of terms, which has grossly done a disservice towards proper understanding. We're not talking. Okay, when the Catholic Church is talking about demonic possessions, they're speaking upon an individual who's being controlled by an entity, not necessarily a demonic entity. And a demonic entity, comparably speaking, would be a institution to which you have contract that is not favoring you or is not treating you in a favorable manner, to which case a benevolent entity might treat you you are more of a functional member of said institution and are reaping benefits that exist within said institution. But nonetheless, you are possessed by said institution and act and operate on behalf and are beholden to the ideas and ideologies and general characteristics and qualities that are associated with that institution. Go ahead. You look like you're ready to jump in.
Oh, no, I was just saying, like, it's funny how that's like a manifestation of what's really going on in the world.
Dude, yeah. I'm telling you, possession might not be demonic, but definitely by
well, it's evil, that's for sure.
A artificial entity. I can't say that these entities are unnatural, because there is nothing that exists that is unnatural. Even if you could say, is there anything you could suggest that is unnatural?
No.
Exactly, because
all of it is natural.
This plastic table is natural as a motherfucker, because natural beings, through their natural curiosities and natural creative endeavors, naturally combined elements and refined resources to fabricate through refined knowledge, naturally proliferating in this life. And lo and behold, all of these things were assembled, you know, and here we have a table. What else we got for the people today?
Well, I did, you know, to kind of close things, I wanted to like talk about another subject. You know, because of the recent conventions from both the Republican and Democratic parties, I just wanted to say that these two candidates suck, you know. The people that are actually willingly supporting them have no idea what's going on, you know.
Only because you looked at me, I didn't know if I was supposed to be quiet at this point.
No.
Can I chime in every now and again?
Yeah. No,
okay.
I want you to.
Okay, cool. Yeah. You know, I got to say this. I've seen some photographs of these folks. They make some of the weirdest facial gestures that I would say are unnatural. No, I mean not unnatural, but just
it is
like,
weird, man.
I can't see someone expressing these facial gestures, you know, with I mean, like, I've seen people on lots of different drugs and stuff, and they didn't even make crazy ass fucking gestures like that. Like, just very, very, very bizarre. Perhaps we can find a couple images to show over this point, you know, for the viewers.
Here's a few of those examples.
Like this one right here.
Yeah,
Are
exactly.
you fucking serious? Like, what the hell is she doing?
So the people that can't see through these candidates need to like step back and then start the vetting process. You know, Donald Trump is a racist. He's a xenophobe. He's a misogynist. He's a corrupt corporatist. He's a plutocrat. He's, you know, I could go on with this list. I could honestly go on with this list. And to quote the Colonel Bezmenov again, you know, he's lower than a fascist, you know, because he said that fascism at least employed a coherent ideology, and Trump doesn't even have an ideology, you know?
Well, he's a corporatist, and if I'm not mistaken, Mussolini suggested that he would have, I guess, taken back the coining of the phrase fascism, and he said, if the story holds true, he said something to the effect that he would rather call it corporatism, because the unification of the state and the corporate bodies or institutions has more to do with the totalitarianistic dominance of a society than I guess any one particular fascist dictator who might have had you know, I guess some type of, you know, as like ultimate say, but the general idea which extends to the people as the law of the land, that you know,
and
relative to the state and the corporate bodies, I suppose.
Just by checking out these clips from Trump's speech at the convention, you can see just what we're referring to. Now, to get on to Hillary Clinton. Okay, so Hillary Clinton is also a corrupt corporatist, and she's also a plutocrat. She is the candidate of the military-industrial complex, the American empire, imperialism, so on and so forth. She's actually backed by neoconservatives. You know, in addition to the neoliberals, she's like backed by Robert Kagan, and all of those people with those
sides
Machiavellian ideology and thoughts upon the world and stuff. She's like, Robert Kagan was one of her advisors, you know, and I'm sure that he will soon. And Victoria Nuland, who is Robert Kagan's wife, like, she's in on it too, man. You know, she's not only backed by neocons, she's backed by certain Republicans as well. You know?
See, I mean, I can't. Like, I don't know. What do you do about this kind of thing?
She's praised by the most murderous Secretary of State in all of America's recent history, Henry Kissinger. She's praised by a person that has committed fucking genocide. You know, if you guys don't know about the first 9/11, which, by the way, was perpetrated by the United States, then you need to look up the first 9/11, because if anything, that shit was worse than the 9/11 that we experienced, because
What's the first 9/11?
The first 9/11 was a campaign in Chile, I believe, and it essentially caused so much disruption and killing and just hubris everywhere in that country, and it destabilized it, and then it never recovered from it. And this was back when fucking Kissinger was Secretary of State, and they are still feeling the effects of that shit. So in a timeline, yeah, I would say that that's a little bit worse than our 9/11, because if they're still fucking suffering after all these years, then and not to mention fucking Vietnam, dude, saying how like the illegal we can do immediately, and like the legal we have to wait for, and like that kind of discourse is like psychotic. And he fucking backs Hillary Clinton and praises Hillary Clinton.
And that's actually
that gives you an insight into the type of people that support her.
That's an interesting comment, actually.
Controversy and scandal follow her at every turn, you know, and this person is, in a lot of respects, more dangerous than Trump, you know, because like Trump talks about certain things, Hillary Clinton has done these things, you know, and you know, that's not to say that Trump is better than her, or that I endorse Trump, you know, and like all that kind of shit. All I'm saying is that both of these candidates are not viable candidates.
I agree, but who? So you have somebody in mind, though. Do you have an alternative candidate to support?
I think that people need to vote for third-party candidates for this election.
Exclusively?
Yeah, exclusively. Because what we need is diversity. We need to undo the duopoly of the Republican and Democratic parties. You know, these third parties need to gather more strength in terms of following, so that the political compass, the Cartesian plane that I was explaining, the ideologies that lie within all of those, because each plane has like a 10 by 10, you know, system where like your dot, if you will, can lie upon. So that means that there's 400 total points on this Cartesian system, which means that your ideology could be in so many different. There's so many parameters.
Well, that's you know, that sounds
consistent. Which is
consistent.
why two parties aren't sustainable.
It sounds consistent with the old adage that I think I heard once or twice, that politics makes for the strangest bedfellows. Mm-hmm. You heard this? Mm-hmm. Continue on if you want.
No, this election is a fucking joke, because I mean, don't even get me started on the vice presidents. Like, that shit is like makes no sense. Fucking Mike Pence makes sense because he looks like a fucking robot, you know. And he like creates his own propaganda and shit like that. But well, you know, on the same respect there, I guess Tim Kaine also makes a lot of sense, because he like embodies what Hillary really represents: pro TPP, pro corporatist, fucking neoliberal. Fucking actually, it's like a more of a cross, a sick and twisted fusion between neoliberalism and neoconservatism that she's got going on for her. But my 2 cents, vote for a third-party candidate so we can get more diversity up in here, which is what fucking the United States represents, you know? Fucking Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton don't represent us at all. And don't forget about municipal state, and don't forget about the 2018 elections. Those are more important, if anything, than this shit. But that's what I have to say about this fucking election cycle, whereas what John Oliver would call it the fucktard salad extravaganza 2016, whatever the fuck.
You know, see, and this is why I kind of, it doesn't surprise me, and it surprises me at the same time, how people can take political theater so seriously, in the same respect that I don't understand how people can follow sports, another institution I might add. But we can talk about that if you like. But you know, it surprises me the degree of seriousness that people take sports, and the degree of seriousness that people take their religion, because like I feel like political theater is kind of like I don't know, like a real-time religious experience to which you can follow the stats of all of the folks, you know, in the program.
Sports for nerds.
Yeah, no, because I would imagine the nerdiest nerd would eventually get to the point, become so jaded that they would reject the institution of government altogether, in the same respect that they rejected the institution of the church, in the same respect that they rejected the institution of
So I guess a nerd in the physical sense, like the quintessential nerd, like not like an intellectual, but like a fucking
the social
I don't want to say loser, but you know, just
like the social outcast,
that fucking stereotype, whatever.
Well, you know, I mean, I remember back in the day there was like terms like geek and nerd, and nerd wasn't necessarily even something that it was even said with any real degree of seriousness. So I'm thinking the term nerd, you know, I mean, that's like coming from like fucking 50s and Happy Days era, you know, that kind of thing. I mean,
Socias and greasers.
Well, I mean, that was a little more of I think that's a little bit more of a social culture, a cultural social phenomena, you know. I mean, identification as far as like a social uniform and culture that's being celebrated. Like, I'm sure hippies didn't refer to each other as hippies, you know. Well, I mean, or you know, like, well, maybe they did. I don't know. I never really.
Well, do hipsters refer to themselves as hipsters? Because I think that they do.
Do they?
Yeah.
So there's such a uniform or anti-uniform for hipsters, for them to collectivize like an application of a term.
Yes.
Interesting. Well, I'm much like a great many things. I'm in the shade of that. Whatever brilliance must be going on there. Fuck hipsters.
For real though, and you know what? Shit, I could say like, fuck so many other groups, you know, but I guess we'll just save that one for later.
Well, I mean, it all comes down to people, and you know, it's really weird, you know, like you know, the disposition I might have on, you know, one day versus the outlook on another, which might affect my, you know, my adherence to, you know, I don't know, maybe I'm just wishy-washy, I don't know, but, you know, no, I mean, I don't know what the fuck I mean. It's getting late. When last you joined us here at In the Shade of Brilliance, he was asking me if I thought that drugs in and of themselves, you know, were an institution, but, you know, they're relative to culture and addiction. An addiction, for sure. And ultimately, when he asked me, it made me think of a Dead Kennedys song, and not even a Dead Kennedys song. It's like a non-song. I can't remember the one that's playing behind the general point of it all, but it's called "Kinky Sex Makes the World Go Around." And if we can figure out, can we end with that?
I mean, I'm sure that we can.
Until someone tells us we can't, right?
Sure.
Okay, so we can like sign off. Are we signing off now?
Yes.
We are. We're signing off now. We're going to play this for you if we can. I don't think anybody's going to stop us. So until next time, I think today, I can honestly say I think I'm in the shade, and there's the brilliance right there, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So once again, this is Sam Daniels right here, and myself, Sean Rowe. Please visit us on our Facebook page at ITSOB Podcast, ITSOB Podcast. Also, that is our Twitter handle. Visit our website at intheshadeofbrilliance.org. Visit our YouTube and SoundCloud accounts. Thank you very much for joining us.
Press like. Get the word out. Stoke the flame.
Prime Minister's office. Prime Minister speaking. Greetings. This is the Secretary of War at the State Department of the United States. We have a problem. The companies want something done about this sluggish world economic situation. Profits have been running more than a little thin lately, and we need to stimulate some growth. Now, we know that there's an alarmingly high number of young people roaming around in your country with nothing to do but stir up trouble for the police and damage private property. Doesn't look like they'll ever get a job. It's about time we did something constructive with these people. We've got thousands of them here, too. They're crawling all over. The companies think it's time we all sit down, have a serious get-together, and start another war. The president, he loves the idea. All those missiles streaming overhead, to and fro, napalm, people running down the road, skin on fire. The Soviets seem up for it. The Kremlin's been itching for the real thing for years. Want a little going-away present for Mr. Brezhnev. Hell, Afghanistan's no fun. So, what do you say? We don't even have to win this war. We just want to cut down on some of this excess population. Now, just start up a draft as many of those people as we can. We'll call up every last youngster we can get our hands on and give them an hour or two to learn how to use an automatic rifle and send them on their way. El Salvador, Northern Ireland, or a moderately repressive regime in South America. We'll just cook up a good Soviet threat story in the Middle East. We need that oil. We had Libya all ready to go, and Colonel Gaddafi's hit squad didn't even show up. I tell you, that man is unreliable. The Russians had their finger on the button just like we did for that one. Just think for a minute. We can make this war so big. The more people we kill in this war, the more the economy will prosper. We can get rid of practically everybody on your dole queue if we plan this right. Take every loafer on welfare right off our computer rolls. Oh, don't worry about those demonstrators. Just pump up your drug supply. So many people have hooked themselves on heroin and amphetamine since we took over. Just like Vietnam, we had everybody so busy with LSD they never got too strong. Kept the war functioning just fine. It's easy. We got our college kids so interested in beer, they don't even care if we start manufacturing germ bombs again. Put a nuclear stockpile in their backyard, they wouldn't even know what it looked like. So how about it? I mean, look, war is money. The arms manufacturers tell me unless we get our bomb factories up to full production, the whole economy is going to collapse. The Soviets are in the same boat. We all agree the time has come to the big one. So what do you say?
It's marvelous.
That's excellent. We knew you'd agree. The companies will be very pleased.